now our focus or our subject is supply and demand of animal source food. So in front of me are the panelists, starting with Mrs. Margaret Munene, CEO of the Palm House Dairy in Kenya. Next, we have Ms. Prudence Masako, Country Director of CARE Tanzania. Then we have Dr. Juliana Kantengwa, founder of Wood Valley Organics. We have Mr. Jay Wolfgel, I hope I got that right. Fantastic. Senior Vice President of Strategy and International Development, Dairy Farmers of America, and Chair, Dairy Nourishes Africa for Global Dairy Platform. And last but not least, we have Ms. Emma Stella Gakuo, COO of Savannah Circuit, Kenya. So we have our neighbors, two neighbors. Karibuni sana, Tanzania. So let's start. As I said, our main subject is supply and demand of animal source food. We start with Mrs. Margaret Munene, CEO of Palm House Dairy, Kenya. So what strategies do you use to ensure a stable supply of dairy products to meet the market demands while promoting ethical and sustainable practices among dairy farmers? Karibu.
Asante sana, and thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. Kiswahili yangu sio safi sana, kwa hivyo nitaongea na Kiingereza. Okay, I think before I talk about the strategies, I will give a bit of a background about Palm House Dairies. I started as a small-scale dairy farmer, and I started with one cow. And eventually my cows grew, and I started selling to the nearest cooperative. And eventually I realized it wasn't working, and I started selling my milk into the informal market. Eventually I started buying milk from the small-scale farmers around me to sell into the informal market. Around that time, the dairy industry in Kenya was a monopoly. So when the dairy industry was liberalized, as a family, we saw an opportunity to make our milk kind of our company more sustainable, and therefore we formalized our company. And we started processing. So we have come a long journey. Our company is 20 plus years old. We partner with roughly 500 small-scale farmers. 85% of them are women. So that is the journey that I have come from. A small-scale farmer starting with one cow to now running a company that is processing 15,000 liters of milk every day. We have that capacity. So coming back to your question on what strategies we have to make sure that we have a stable supply and still promoting ethical and sustainable practices. So how do we do this? Number one, we look at our farmers as our partners. They are not just farmers who supply to us milk. They are our partners, and we value them a lot, and we realize that without them, our company cannot exist. And therefore, as partners, there are very, very many things we do together. And one of the things that we have done over the years is training our farmers. We have what we call barazas 4 times in a year, and we bring our farmers together and we bring them to a farmer who is really doing well so that they can act as a role model. And we train them and just teach them that farming is not just farming. Farming can be a business and it can earn you money. We teach them bookkeeping, and also we teach them on clean milk production, because of course if they produce clean milk, they benefit and we also benefit. We teach them on good animal husbandry, because when cows are looked after, then they produce better. And then we train them on feeding. We have really trained them, especially in terms of silage making, so that when there isn't fodder, at least if you have silage which you have kept for yourself as a farmer, then your cows will not go hungry. So training is a very key component in our company, and something that we value a lot, and something that we have seen has helped our farmers grow, and the demand for milk. They're able to meet our demand for milk. We also help our farmers access inputs. Our farmers are small scale, like I said, and accessing inputs is usually not very easy. So one of the things that we have done is we help them access veterinary services. These we do by contracting people who can offer them veterinary services. When their cows are sick and they don't have money, this person will come and treat the cow. And we pay this person at the end of the month, of course, from the farmer's proceeds, from the milk that they have given us. We also have AI providers that come and give our farmers AI services when their cows on heat. And as we train our farmers, we teach them that they must have better cows, and this they will do by breeding and making sure that the daughter who is born is better than the mother, and the granddaughter is better than the daughter. And eventually, they have cows that produce more milk than what they started with. And within 3, 4, 5 years, you find a farmer who had one cow producing maybe 5 liters of milk has much more milk just by using, oh, you can't hear me? Oh, sorry. Yeah, just by using AI. The other input we provide for our farmers is concentrates. We buy concentrates, dairy meal, maize germ in bulk from the suppliers in Nairobi. And we have stores that are close to our farmers. And we are able to give these feeds to our farmers in a little bit cheaper than if they went just to the shop to buy, because we buy in bulk. And where we keep this food is closer to where they are, so they're able to access the feeds. The other thing that we have done to help our farmers is financing. When we started 20 plus years ago, a lot of our farmers, especially the women, did not have bank accounts. And I encourage them to open bank accounts, because when you have a bank account, then you become a little bit bankable, though there is such a negative, kind of a negative perception about giving loans to women, and this is a perception that we must keep on changing. So our farmers, especially the women, now have bank accounts. And because they have bank accounts, we can connect them to microcredits. We can link them, and they can get loans because they can show that they are giving milk to us, and therefore they have some money. And we vouch just to say, yes, they are our farmer, give them credit, they will be able to pay. This has really worked, and now all our farmers actually have bank accounts. In the beginning, the women will say, no, let my husband be the one having the bank account. I want peace at home. But over time, they have learned, yes, it is important that the bank account is in their name. I told them, I have a bank account. And therefore, I always say that positive masculinity is very, very important. I myself would not be here if it was not for my father. And Palm House Dairies is where it is today because of the combined effort and support and partnership with my husband, Eric. So we must continually encourage positive masculinity for the empowerment of our women. So those are the things that we do to make sure that we have a stable supply of milk, so that we are also able to give milk and milk products to the people to our customers. And one last thing in terms of sustainability and being good to the climate, we provide farmers with seedlings and fruit seedlings to plant. And we actually have yearly competitions, and we award the farmer who has not only planted, but has grown their seedlings. And this has become a very, very interesting thing in our relationship with our farmers. A lot of our farmers now are growing avocados. And you know how avocados have become, it's a very lucrative business. And we are in the process of seeing how they can actually get better prices for their avocados. Thank you very much. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. But very interesting. I love the positive masculinity. And apparently, I'm told women are more, they have a better chance of getting loans from the bank because they're trustworthy. But anyway, that's debatable, I guess. Thank you very much, Mrs. Margaret Munene. Let me go to Ms. Emma Stella. Emma Stella, how does Savannah support supply chain resilience to help farmers maintain a consistent and reliable supply of dairy products to the market, especially during times of market fluctuations or disruptions? Karibu.
Thank you very much, Zuhura. I think it's a really great pleasure to be moderated by you, and of course, a very great panel. Yeah, once again, my name is Emma Stella Gakuo from Savannah Circuit. So we are an engineering company, bringing change to agriculture by making sure that we are making value addition equipment accessible, and especially in animal sourced food sector. Here we try to make sure that through locally manufactured, custom made to need and budget, that we are able to bring value addition equipment from a critical point, which is cold chain, that without a lot of animal source foods supported with cold chain, then there will not be the next level, which is market access, value addition, and incomes, and just making sure that there's a return on investments of what has been done by our farmers. So also we try to make sure that all our equipment are solar powered. So we have a new technology we call solar on body. So technically what we do is that we fabricate, power, and make sure there's refrigeration system on these custom capacity chillers. And the best part is they can be placed on any means of transportation. So we have capacities from as low as 100 liters all the way to 30 tons with option to be solar powered to facilitate cooling on the go from the farm gate to every point of the supply chain. And the best part is we are trying to make sure that we integrate mostly the informal sector. We are talking about farmers with 5-10 liters daily production, just to make sure that, number one, they're able to be very well aggregated just through their cooperatives, and they're also able to access cooling within 2 hours post-milking. So to date, we've worked collaboratively with cooperatives across the country, small and cottage dairy facilities across the country as well, facilitating transportation of milk, supporting access to equipment through new business approaches where we understand the cost of equipment is high investment. So in that regard, we've introduced a cooling as a service model. To date, we've transported close to 2.4 million liters of milk. And also, best part is with other equipment like pasteurizers, packaging equipment like fillers and sealers, and all other array of equipment, that they're also available on a lease model. So this allows the dairy businesses and cooperatives to focus on sourcing the milk and taking it to market, as we take care of the problem of making sure that equipment to support value addition is available where it's needed the most, and also available in capacities that fit the exact business need. For example, for a cooperative working daily with, say, 1,000 liters of milk, then they'll be able to be matched with a bulk tank, for example, that matches that particular production. And as their production and business performance increases, then they can trade in that equipment and take maybe 5,000 liters of an equipment down the line. So with that, we try to make sure that there's food safety, and the element of post-harvest losses management is very, very well taken care of. So for that, we consider ourselves post-harvest champions. And to just link up to your question on how we try to maintain, or rather to support the value chain resilience in maintaining reliable supply in market, especially when there's disruptions and fluctuations. And I'll just give a case way back from the time of COVID. where there was a lot of travel restrictions. And for some, businesses and cooperatives, they had problem on where they would take the milk. Some of them use public transportation, some of them subcontract logistics companies, things like that. But at the time, I think it was a really point where we were coming post-pilot now. We worked very closely with the smallholder farmers. They were most of our focus groups in giving us the features of the product, because it's supposed to be very easy to use, that even at very last mile, and little education or interaction with these different types of technologies, it can be able to use. What does a farmer want? They just want to have their milk stored in the right appropriate equipment. They just need to know that the milk will go to where it's supposed to go. And secondly, just clean the equipment and use and continue making sure that there's, milk is accessing their markets. So we were able to facilitate that. And of course, generally improving storage and transportation of the milk. And by having these small modularized different chillers, it means that we are able also to support in cutting the cost of running the cooling element, which is very critical for dairy specifically, and also making sure that through an AI-enabled management system that we have working with dairies, so it will help them make sure that there's real-time data at aggregation point, and best part, we are able to geolocate farmers from their households. So say in a village, we try to register all the farmers into the system, form clusters, and then from these cluster zones, through their registered cooperatives now, they can access the chiller, and we've seen that the operations of aggregating milk has become leaner, less expensive, and also making sure that there's an element of inclusivity in all of this. Remember back to my point on on working with focus groups, the smallholders, was also a very strong element when we were designing the products for great user experience, to bring in an element of gender. That this mobile chiller will allow women are likely built like myself, that I can be able to work with this chiller. By that I mean operate it, dispense my milk, clean it as I need. So that was a very, very important key to make sure that we have design that is fitting for women. And lastly, also best part through some programs, especially the non-profit partners and development organizations. They've been very, very key in facilitating our journey, both ourselves as a business, but also with the ecosystem where we work in, by making sure that now, through this different equipment, by being accessible to youth, by being accessible now to women, now we're bringing everybody to the table. There's an element of market diversification. We have more product, yogurts, cheese, different types of yogurts, making it to market. Why? Because there's access to this equipment. We have now more youth, not necessarily breaking away from the cooperative model, but just being their own selves, running businesses by themselves, still within the dairy sector. So that's what we've been able to do to date, and we hope that we can scale what we are doing and making sure that regardless of what happens in the markets, we are able to continually keep supporting our people.
Thank you very much. Fantastic explanation. So basically, you do buy the milk from the farmers?
Sorry if I wasn't clear. We facilitate transportation. So we'll give you equipment. You're a logistic company, you're an aggregator. So with access to equipment, you can facilitate that bit. So just accessible equipment.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Now I got it. Now can I go to Dr. Juliana Kantengwa? Biodiversity loss is a growing concern right now globally. So how can organic farming practices within livestock production preserve and enhance biodiversity in local ecosystems while meeting the increasing demand for source food?
Thank you very much, Eunice. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, just like others before me, if I address your question, maybe a little bit of a history about Woodville Organics. The word organics is double-edged, one meaning that we minimize the use of chemicals and pesticides, but another one also, the other edge is how things are being piloted and we are growing organically from within, learning from the lessons that we take. So coming to your question, yeah, biodiversity loss. Woodville Organics is situated in the peri-urban Kigali, Rwanda. we obtained the land from degraded areas where the owners were no longer able to produce anything because of, sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now? Is that better? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, because the areas were degraded, and we started off by, the first challenge was how do we make this area productive, because the owners were giving it up, they were not producing anything. So we started off with a dairy unit by having cattle there with the aim of using livestock manure to reconstitute the subsoils by use of humus and composting and the like. And also we realized that growing our pastures was not coming up very well, so we started going into, that's the organic story of where we are growing organically, looking at the next step. So we started using cover crops, and then we saw that was working. Once we harvest cover crops specifically, we were using the bean plant Mukuna. Once we harvest it, we found that it was becoming fertile, so we used it for planting more, and we were producing more. And all this we were using, because of the location of the farm, most of our workers are single mothers for different reasons, not just teen mothers, but also widowed mothers or those who separated from their husbands. We were attracting females, or maybe because they found I'm a female, I don't know, but the women, and they were working and were being more stable than the men. So most of our workforce, over 70% are women, whether they're casual workers or whether they're the ones that stay. So we went on learning what works for us. And then when they saw the places that were not previously, that were not being productive, there were galleries, there were, they saw them being productive, producing beans, producing maize, because of the practices that we're using. So I started talking to them, look, you can also go and use on your small plots. So we started producing milk for sale, we started a chicken unit, we also got rabbits, we got pigs, we got bees, then we grow fruits and vegetables, we got sheep and goats. It's a junk of all trade. But this junk of all trade is where we find the biodiversity. These animals, once, like the sheep, they graze. Once they graze, wherever they pass, if you go back and see what they are litter, what happens? The next day you find insects trying to make those things. The insects are coming, they're being attracted because that's where they belong. We're here, we are the topmost of the ecological ladder. But down there are other, not human beings, there are other beings which are busy also making life there. And below them, in the soils become good because we're having the soil microbiome. So as we're busy in this room, that's how in the soil, the small little things are busy making life. Because of those little things in the soil, that's how we make complex societies. They also have complex societies there. So I'm talking about soil health. Unless we have soil health, you can't have plant health. And unless you have plant health, you can't have animal health. So we started with animals to go back and regenerate degenerated soils, and the soils are giving us back. And so how are we scaling up? Because we saw how it is working for us. So, and I looked at, I didn't mention anything about myself. I'm a retired civil servant, and most of my colleagues are telephone farmers. And I have a training in a veterinary, as a veterinary person. I see how their farms are mismanaged. So I said, now, if I use this model to train the unskilled youth, the unskilled young women, to go out and help out these telephone farmers. So we are using that as a model to spread the story of Wood Valley across different areas by training people, and you come and get the former unskilled people from our farm where they are now skilled. So we are skilling the unskilled, so to say. When we're talking about empowering the youth, most of the time we're looking at youth who are graduates of some level, but we still have over 50% of Rwandans who are illiterate. That caliber of people who dropped out of school, they are not in work. They cannot boast of any skill that they can offer apart from the energy. So once you train them on how to look after poultry, once you train them on how to look after dairy, once you train them on how to look after piggery, not only can they go back and create their own small enterprises, but they can also boast of being employable. they can meaningfully get employment from those who are able. So that's what we are doing at Wood Valley. Coming back to my name of organics, we are minimizing on chemical use, but organic are also growing and seeing what is possible. Can I say anything more?
Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much. I'll come back to you anyway. I still have more questions. Let's go to Mr. J. Mr. J, there was a time you were smiling when Doctor was speaking. But to you, in the context of the African dairy sector, how do you perceive the current balance between supply and demand for dairy products? First, and then I'll have a follow-up question.
Gotcha. Thank you, as the other panelists had said, for the opportunity to be here, and most importantly, the opportunity to practice positive masculinity in the panel today. So, brief introduction so you have a context for what I'm talking about. I work for a dairy company in the US, a cooperative owned by some 6,000 dairy farmers, and I'm part of an organization called the Global Dairy Platform. The Global Dairy Platform is made up of the leading dairy companies around the world. Not just the biggest, but the best, including Madame Manene and Palm House Dairies, who are proud members of the Global Dairy Platform. And together we look at issues that affect everybody in the world in terms of dairy. And when we talk about dairy, again to provide context, it's the biggest commodity, agricultural commodity in the world by value, number one. It's the third largest agricultural commodity in the world by volume. There are 1 billion people in the world whose livelihoods depend upon dairy. 133 million dairy farmers averaging less than 3 cows each, nearly 40 million of which are owned or run by women. Families of more than 600 million people who live and work on those farms. More than 150 million jobs created by dairy. Truck drivers, farm workers, veterinarians, plant workers, marketers of dairy products, who together with their families total that more than 1 billion people who know when they wake up today what they eat, where they live, is dependent upon dairy sector. We're important. We're important. And in that context, when we look around, we also have a responsibility across all the activities that we hit. The fact that we are important for livelihoods, creating regular cash flow, important for nutrition, the highest quality nutrition with the shortest possible supply chain, impactful in the environment, both positive in the sense of soil health, positive in the sense of more than 80% of what cows consume is from ground otherwise unfarmable or from products that are byproducts of producing food, but also with a negative impact, as we see now with the footprint from carbon. So dairy is large, dairy is impactful, and dairy needs to show how it's responsible. But to answer your specific question here, where do we see the future of supply and demand in dairy? Demand for dairy around the world continues to grow, very closely linked to growing populations and evolving populations with more middle class. We see it in every part of the world that's developed more animal protein, more animal source foods, and dairy is a critical part of that because of the nutrient power that dairy brings. So we see a continued growth, but we see an evolution of where that demand is coming from and evolution of where that supply is going to come from in the future. Very specific to Africa, the opportunities here are immense. The continent is already a large importer of dairy from around the world. Products that come down from Europe, come up from New Zealand, come across from the US. And of course, with a growing population, a developing market and economy, that demand will only increase. So the opportunities here are to find out, are there places in Africa that can in fact produce that dairy that's already consumed here, produce that dairy that will be increasingly demanded in the future. And speaking from a global dairy perspective, we absolutely believe that opportunity is here to professionalize, to modernize, to evolve, to transform the dairy sector, to help feed and support this market as it exists today and as it will grow. I hope that.
Just with Mr. J again, African dairy markets often experience variations in demand due to factors like population growth, urbanization, dietary shifts. So how does the Dairy Farmers of America collaborate with local stakeholders, if you do at all, to anticipate and respond to changing demand trends in the world and Africa in general?
Yep. So I'm going to go backwards a bit to get to your question, which is if we think about dairy in its role, large, impactful, we see the opportunity in Africa. How do we get there? How do we evolve to actually deal with solving the supply and demand issue, doing it in a way that is consistent and reliable and predictable? And the Global Dairy Platform made the decision several years ago that we wanted to go somewhere in the world and show the holistic benefit of dairy, right? All the things that dairy does, the nutrition, the livelihoods, the economic impacts. And our organizations have been active around the world in dairy development forever. You can look almost any corner of the world, you will see projects that have been done by dairy. But we wanted to find some place that we thought had the real potential to grow, to show the positive impact of dairy, where we weren't active commercially. And so we made a decision about 4 years ago to initiate the project called Dairy Nourishes Africa and to focus on East Africa. In fact, we started in Tanzania about 4 years ago at a program in Dar, hosted by the ministry, opened by the ministry, with more than 130 stakeholders from across the sector, because we're looking for how we can use our experience to help you find solutions to your problems, to help you find ways to approach your opportunities. Not to tell you what to do, but to listen and bring what we know to help you get there. We're 4 years into that project now, a project that we tried to approach differently in the sense that we are looking holistically across that whole chain. Other speakers have talked about it before. If you focus on only one end or the other, which has been the problem in dairy development around the world, you never get a final solution. It's fantastic to provide milk to a student in school. But if you don't take the opportunity while that program's in place to build a supply chain of milk in the future where you have processors and farmers, when that program ends, that opportunity ends. If you go the other extreme and put a cow on everybody's farm, everybody's backyard, you create an opportunity for production, but if you don't create those processors and those markets, eventually those cows leave the system and you don't create a holistic value chain. So we look across the whole chain. We work with our partners at Bain Consulting to help us with work on the market side. We work with our partners at Land O'Lakes Venture 37 on the farm side. We work together with processors to say, how do we make the whole thing work together? And we've done that in a way that we think brings economic resilience, to your point, professionalize the value chain so that it is going to preserve itself in the ups and the downs. Create professional farmers and processors and demand that means it will want to stay there through the changes and risk that flow. And after 4 years, we've come a long way in determining what we think is possible, in defining what transformation would look like. Not incrementally making every part a little bit better, but what does the proper sector look like in the future? How do you transform it? If you don't know what the plan is, the future looks like, you're unlikely to get there. And the last comment I'll make on this is, where are we at today? So if the way to solve it is to create a professional infrastructure that looks holistically at dairy to keep the sector growing in place to be successful in the future, we worked this project, Dairy Nourishes Africa, to build this knowledge base to start to paint the picture of what transformation looks like. It was announced at COP27 by the Green Climate Fund that they were working in partnership with the Global Dairy Platform, with IFAD, with FAO, with governments, including Tanzania, to implement a $1 billion program across 10 countries to help evolve and transform dairy in a climate-smart way. We are currently finalizing our plan for East Africa, $400 million across 4 countries, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda. We hope to have that up in a very short period of time, and that will then start to give us the tools to actually implement transformation. That's what will make the dairy industry stable going forward.
One last question, sorry. When
There's
you
more.
talk about transformation, and you mentioned the word professionally, do we consider the traditional way that we have? Because sometimes I think, I'm not sure, I'm not a profession, but I think Africa has their own traditional ways, and then when we come to this transformation, we actually tend to forget that there are better ways, traditional ways, but we just have to improve something. We don't really have to change much, if you know what I mean. What do you think?
Yeah, so again, a bit of a background. Dairy is incredibly diverse, right? Dairy is an end industry. We talk about it. It's large farmers and small farmers. It's nutrition. It's indulgence. It's not a singular solution. It's part of food systems in a more broad context. The organization I work for is 6,000 farmers who own us. We have hundreds of farmers who milk less than 20 cows. We have hundreds of farmers who milk thousands of cows each. That diversity is a strength, and different systems apply in different places. If we think about this market, so our perspectives, and working with ILRI, working with Tanzanian Ag Development Bank, working with all the stakeholders in Tanzania as an example, when we talk about professionalization, we talk about what is the size of farmer, the type of farming model that can be economically viable, that can support a family as a middle-class family, that can make youth want to go back and become a farmer and see a future for it. And for us, the math works at 5 to 10 cows and employs much of what you do here already. It just adds in many of the things that Margaret spoke about, the services, the support, the tools to be successful. So when we talk about professionalizing, we talk about somebody whose farming is their livelihood. It's what they want to do it well, not something they hop in and out of.
Thank you very much. Got that. Ms. Prudence Masako, Country Director of CARE Tanzania. So for ensuring a stable supply of animal source food, collaboration is extremely important. In the context of Tanzania, how does CARE with the government or different, let's say different stakeholders, maintain a balance between supply and demand during times of market volatility and global challenges? Karib.
Thank you, so. Thank you, Zura. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for inviting CARE to be into this important panel. First of all, as CARE, we are operating in over 100 countries, Tanzania being inclusive, and so today, welcome to hear a snapshot of CARE, but taking into account the Tanzanian context. So, first of all, when you look at Tanzania, the daily sector is dominated by the smallholder farmers and really subsistence farmers, the ones having around 1 cow. Yeah, so that is the context, and it's a place where CARE intervenes together in collaboration with the government. We don't go to farmers who are having many cows. We really want to really reach the vulnerable, and especially women and young people. So when you look at how best are we trying to look on the volatility of the market, and when you look at the supply and demand side, first of all, our big focus is on the supply side. And like I said, the smallholder farmers. And really, we look at to increase the productivity, but as well as we look at the climate. How is the climate variability across the setups, and as well as to look at the markets? Because you have to have those. Supply, I'm working on the supply. How are the markets? But the markets want a certain kind of increased productivity, and we are looking at these smallholder farmers which are having only 1 cow. So we have identified approaches, and our approaches, end of the day, we want approaches which are sustainable and equitable. When you talk about equitable, we mean those people who don't have that access, and predominantly it's young people and women. And when you look at young people, we focus mostly on the 15 to the 35. And most of them you find like they're either primary school leavers or secondary school leavers, and sometimes graduates from the universities or colleges, but mostly those are the ones. And just to say who we are first, before we intervene, we call ourselves as conveners, connectors, and facilitators. How do we do that? We have our innovative approach, which we call Village and Land Associations, which very famously in Tanzania, it's called Vikoba. And in the Vikoba, it's around 2 to 15 people to 25 people. And CARE is the champion of Vikoba back in 1994 in Zanzibar. So within the Village and Land Associations, we also have our approach, which we called Farmer Field and Business Schools. In that Farmers Fields and Business School, we make sure that the whole value chain is addressed: productivity, markets, gender issues, and connecting farmers to the financial institutions. So I would love to give you an example on how best we have been doing that. For instance, when you look at the equitable markets and then you look at the gender, how best can you address that? We once worked in Simanjiro, and we know Simanjiro is a context whereby most of the dairy owners are men. So we really looked on how best we can start those groups. And in our groups, when I'm talking about gender, we are very, very targeted. We don't tick the boxes to say like we are dealing with gender. What we do, we from the design stage, these groups constitute around 60 to 70 women. So at least we are saying, yes, we are dealing with women. You might wonder why, but because we know most of the women are living on the subsistence farming, and most of them, they don't own anything. If you find in a household, most of the cows will be the cows of the man. The woman will just take care, milk the cows, and so forth. So in these groups, women come to the groups. They are being taught on how best they can have good practices on the dairy. But as well as talking with their counterparts, male involvement is very critical to make sure that they understand the essence of women being empowered and the women to have skills and knowledge on how best they can do the work. So you find like these women, end of the day, they know how to process the milk, they know how to process the ghee, the butter, and so forth. Another example is like we worked with young people 15 to 35 in Morogoro, Njombe, and Mbeya. And before doing anything, we started first with a needs assessment. And in that need assessment, we wanted to know what is it like. And we found that 13% of the people who were interviewed, they wanted to be involved in livestock. And not only livestock which is dairy. And when we looked further, we came to realize in all the value chain, there are 3 ways which these young people could involve themselves in the dairy farm. First, some wanted to keep cows, like dairy cows, and then others just wanted to kind of have the pasture land so that they can have many acres of pasture, and then they can be selling the pasture even during the dry season. But the others just wanted to be the aggregators. So the ones which wanted to be the dairy farm, with the daily cows, I can give one example. They started with 1 cow, but because of the knowledge, the way we connect them in these groups, we connect them with the banks, we connect them with the vocational training institutes, and we connect them with the private sector. For instance, the ASAS and the Shambani are really the private sector which we are working with together. So you find like these young people, they have this cow, they'll go to the ASAS, they'll be told how best they can provide the best milk, but as well as we connected the young people with the Landutwa, and they learned, wow, it's not necessary for me to have a cow, but I can have a pasture land, and the pasture land I can be all along the season, we can have the feed for the cows, and then we can sell the feeds during the dry season. So they were connected with that. And the young people in Morogoro, they said, no, we just want to be aggregators. We know people are having one liter of milk, so they go all around. They started with 0 liters, and right now they sell 200 liters per day. So you find like really there is that kind of transformation within the young people. But the best thing as well in our groups, it's also digital. They don't use the normal registers, but they use the digitalized registers, which enables them to do their mathematics in prices, in money very quickly. So you look at the way we operate, and we don't, as NGOs, we have projects. You find like they have 2 years, 5 years, and then off they go. But for us, we follow up and see how best are we doing that. And up to now, we are connected, though the project ended 3 years, 4 years. But the other thing, as I said, we are facilitators and connectors. We also don't end there. When we worked with Vector, we came to realize the vocational training curriculum for livestock keeping had issues which were missing. So we kind of worked together, and then we added the entrepreneurial skill along in that, and the animal health as well, rather than just giving people cows without even having their passion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're kind of running out of time, maybe 1 minute for some of, not all of you. Mrs. Margaret, we haven't heard you for a long time. Speaking about women, how do you ensure that women's roles and contribution are recognized and supported? In 1.5 minutes, if you can explain that, please.
I think I already alluded to that when I was talking.
Yeah, a little bit more.
85% of our farmers are women, and we empower them with all what I spoke about, training them, providing inputs for them, and most importantly, by connecting them to finance, by connecting them to microcredit, where they can get loans to improve, for example, on their zero grazing unit. Healthy, happy cows produce more. So if a woman is able to get money to build a better zero grazing unit for her cow or for her cows, that is really going to impact on the productivity of the cow and directly on her livelihood, because she'll get more milk and therefore more money. So finance is key, and it is very, very important to make sure that women are able to access finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Juliana, briefly, could you provide examples of successful agroecological approaches that promote sustainable animal farming? Like 1.5
thank you.
minutes.
Thank you once again. Examples, I won't go very far. I will again come back to my Wood Valley. Because we try to use the different agroecological methods. Because once you read about them in literature everywhere, different places they're using different systems depending on what's happening. In Rwanda, being a heated situation, we make sure that soil erosion is contained by digging trenches where we can. There are better methods, but that's what we can afford. And we also plant our pastures in between to control erosion. We do mixed farming as to where. We do mixed cropping. We do crop rotation. We do the way we plant our crops in a manner that does not encourage erosion, but also by mixed cropping, we are trying to make use of biological diversity, where we use like nitrogen fixing plants to intercrop them with those ones which remove nitrogen. So in so doing, we encourage increasing production using the sustainable methods, which even these villagers of ours we work with know very well. There are tested systems that they know. Just like my friend was saying, my colleague was saying that we look at what they know, we build on their passions. So we found that they take it up much better than doing what they do not know. And in so doing, I started off by saying we started off with plots of land that were not productive. First of all, being near Kigali, we make sure that we produce for the niche market. And the niche market is, we started off with very small quantities of milk where we're giving just the surrounding areas. But now, in Kigali terms, we supply 300 liters of milk. That's, to us, it's a big achievement. Sandwiched between big producers, I feel a bit intimidated. But in terms of our own scale, we are doing very well. With eggs, we started off with turkey eggs, which were very few. Now we keep poultry, we keep chicken, and we sell, we produce quite a number, like almost 400 crates or 500 crates a week. And on Wednesday afternoon, that's when we meet with the women. because most of them had, malnutrition is an issue in Rwanda. So we give them eggs and milk, and we teach them why it is important to feed their children on eggs. And so far, the women who have been working with us have had also to buy their own chicken, and they've benefited from also keeping these rabbits. So we are spreading our own model, and so these women, not only do they now have their own eggs in their own backyard, and their children are benefiting from it. We are attacking malnutrition, awareness, because most of the time that children are malnutrited not because they don't have, but because they don't know the usefulness, or they don't consider it a necessity. So you find that keeping about 4 to 5 chicken are good enough to keep down malnutrition. So in terms of also the small plots of land, they're also cultivating them. They first cultivate theirs and then come to ours. They use the same model, and you find that they're not ready to give up their lands because they're degraded, because theirs also are using the same practices. And I forgot to mention that we are supplying, in the northern region, we are supplying a cooperative, a potato growing cooperative with poultry manure, and every season they come to us to buy from us, it's a big cooperative of about 50 people. And they grow their potatoes organically, and they also supply other niche markets. So these are some of our humble achievements.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Emma Stella, in 1 minute, you had a very interesting job and story. Any challenges you faced in your journey?
Yeah, definitely. As a local manufacturer of equipment, I mean, there are a lot of hurdles from raw material pricing, the tariffs, all of these things that to make sure that increase our cost of production, which again, pricing factor comes in. And but outside of that is we've been very fortunate to collaborate with ecosystem stakeholders and just make sure that we are in spaces where we can lobby for change. We've worked closely with civil lobbying organizations to just speak in regards to how we can support equipment and whatever we need for agri-processing in a context that fits our people. Because as you realize, even from the conversation from the other speakers, they're working with significant, yes, but still modest volumes that they're handling per day, which would mean us probably importing a 10,000 bulk tank, for example, with different guidelines and operation costs might not be the most ideal in a particular case. So then that brings the need to continually empower our local people or our local companies to make sure that we bring equipment that is very relatable with our people and very, very, very much easy to use. And also, most importantly, where now I think we have an opportunity where we will not be in competing positions that if it's price friendly, then it contributes largely to, say, greenhouse gases emission, for example. But now I think we have an opportunity where we can create a good balance for economic livelihoods, for environment generally, and also, most importantly, for the progress for food and financial security.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. J, any closing remarks?
Am I on? 3 things I'll say very quickly. First off, talked a little bit about Dairy Nourishes Africa. I could spend a few days on it, so anybody here who wants to know more, just ask. Number 2, speaking on behalf of the global dairy sector, we believe in the potential of this market, of the African continent, both to produce and to consume dairy and the positive impact that can have. There is a fantastic opportunity here. And every time I visit, I'm only further reinforced that that is not just potential. The quality of people I've met at this conference, the quality of people you hear speaking on this board, I have every belief that you will succeed.
Thank you very much. Ms. Prudence, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. Just to say, investing in young people and women is critical, but invest in things which they believe in and it's their priority. because end of the day, they will take the ownership of it, and it will be contextually right for them rather than just bringing something which they don't know. Like what Zura was talking about, that kind of artificial meat. How can you do that? But if things they believe in, for sure you will go. But as well as make sure you have proper partners at the right time who fits to that context. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to remind you, our panelists, Mrs. Margaret Munene, CEO of Palm House Dairy Kenya, Dr. Juliana Kantengwa, founder of Wood Valley Organics, Ms. Emma Stella Gakuo, Savannah Circuit Kenya, Mr. Jay Wolvogel, Senior Vice President, Strategy and International Development, Dairy Farmers of America, and Chair of Dairy Nourishes Africa for Global Dairy Platform, and Ms. Prudence Masako, Country Director of CARE Tanzania. Thank you very much. Karibuni Tanzania. Asanteni sana. And thank you for, you were a lovely audience. Thank you very much.